Welcome to Front Lines. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and Canada, from Europe and the Middle East, South America, Australia, and of course in Armenia and Artsakh. It is a heavy day today. The last 24 hours have been a heavy day, thinking about and reflecting about where the last 1 year has brought us. We are, of course, happy to be with our viewers today, as we have been throughout this last year. As those of you that follow us know, Frontlines was born on this day a year ago, at the start of the war and at the moment of attack by Azerbaijan, Turkey, and their mercenary supporters. And with that, it seems as if life has stood still. We've engaged in a number of interviews over the last year. And we've interviewed, obviously, those of you who've been with us, with journalists and diplomats, with teenagers and healthcare workers, with military strategists and heads of NGOs, with photographers and the president, with writers and researchers, foreign ministers, ambassadors, students, professors, hunger strikers, cultural historians. We've interviewed people from bomb shelters, from fields, from offices, from homes, from cars, from hospitals, from bunkers, from airports, and from streets. And it has been a journey, as you all know, that have traveled it with us and with our guests, who have given so much of their time, some of them in very dire circumstances, in order to bring us, the global Armenian community, information about what is happening on the ground, what continues to happen on the ground. And Garo and I had pledged that we wouldn't stop doing our interviews, having our conversations here on Frontlines until the war was over. And as we can see, the war is not over. The impact of the war is not over. And for that reason, we continue to have our conversations, our in-depth looks into the issues that matter in Artsakh and in Armenia and throughout the diaspora, as we look to the future of the Armenian nation and look to come out of the circumstances that have brought us to this rather dire and difficult moment in our collective Armenian history. And with that, I'd like to pass it on to Garo to introduce our guest for today before we get started.
Thank you, Karnig. I'd like us to pause for 44 seconds. 44 seconds, please. Thank you. There was silence for 44 seconds. There was anything but silence in Artsakh for 44 days. Yet there was plenty of silence from the international community during those 44 days. It has been a full year and a day now in Artsakh and in Yerevan. It's September 27 here in the United States, September 28 in our homeland. We have with us the human rights defenders of the Republic of Artsakh, Gegham Stepanyan, and the Republic of Armenia, Arman Tatoyan. We have been with these gentlemen, and these gentlemen have been with the entire Armenian population of homeland and diaspora the entire 366 days. What have we learned in those 366 days? How much more do we have to learn? I will leave my thoughts and reflections to my final remarks. And for now, we will turn to our friends, our brothers, our colleagues, our compatriots, Arman and Gegham. Thank you. Karnig?
Thank you, Garo. I'd like to start, if I may, with the same question really to Arman and Gegham, and that is to describe, if you will, for our viewers, what the last 24 hours has been like in terms of commemorating the anniversary of the start of the war, as well as, of course, honoring the martyrs and the families of the martyrs who have paid the ultimate price for the defense of the homeland. Arman, if we can start with you, what has the experience been so far among the civilian population? What has been the mood, and what are your reflections a year after the start of the war?
Good morning to everyone, our distinguished audience, our compatriots who are now following us, and thank you very much, Garo-jan, Karnig-jan, to you for organizing, for initiating this discussion, and for having been with us since the very first moment of the war started. Each and every day we were together discussing, exchanging information, discussing all the complications. And I want to greet my colleague Gegham Stepanyan here in this discussion. Well, of course, there are lots of emotions, and one can sometimes you feel that one feels that there are even no words to say, but rather to feel the tragic consequences which are still continuous of this war. Because this war was, very specific. It was accompanied from the very first day by unprecedented war crimes and crimes against humanity. We've experienced, our nation has experienced and still is experiencing tragic consequences, dangerous consequences of hatred, state-sponsored enmity and hatred policy from the side of Azerbaijani authorities. And they are with extremist even forms for the recent period, clearly amounting to fascism. This country has been blaming Armenia, and Artsakh continues to blame in being fascists, but it's very funny because when one analyzes their policy, rhetorics, everything, all the consequences, it is more than clear that the fascism is so high in that being generated by authorities of this country. And there are so many facts. In this introduction part, let me just say that even if we go to the atrocities committed during the war, in a cynical manner, clearly demonstrating their hatred, their cynicism. Azerbaijani soldiers beheading our compatriots. For example, 89 years old Yuri Asaryan from the village Azokh, 69 years old Gennady Petrosyan from Madatashen. They beheaded these people and they filmed the whole process. They were doing it intentionally and then posting their videos, spreading through social media, spreading to the Armenian social media intentionally, which was full of violent scenes targeting children as well. But this war was not only against Artsakh. I want to highlight the main part of it, yes, was to our homeland Artsakh, but it was also against Armenia because we had also shellings, shootings, casualties here in the territory of Armenia. And apart from all of this, on the top of this, all of this, we have also hostilities and the war during COVID-19 pandemic. And I have a special report which clearly shows that the war, that hostilities or military attacks during pandemic highly contributed to the dramatic increase of cases of deaths and to the collapse. It led to the collapse of the healthcare systems of both Armenia and Artsakh. And so consequently, and this can be qualified easily as crimes against humanity. So generalizing, we feel still that there is the policy of ethnic cleansing and genocide. There are no active hostilities, no active military attacks, but I have to say that I have the clear feeling that the war, as you very rightly said, is not over. The war is still there, which forces us to behave and to think respectively, in being ready for the real dangerous consequences, and of course to take into account our lessons learned.
Thank you. And Gegham, we know that within the last 24 hours in Stepanagert and throughout Artsakh, there was a moment of silence throughout the entire territory of Artsakh, at least that under the Russian protection of the peacekeepers. And that was a pretty important moment, I think, that people felt some real solidarity a year later with one another, and in a place where everybody knows somebody who has suffered death, injury, loss. Could you tell us a little bit about what the day was like in Stepanagert in Artsakh today, actually yesterday, as well as your reflections on the resilience of the Artsakh people today, 1 year on?
27th September of 2020 was really very, very difficult even to remember and to try to go back. And yesterday we faced all the fears that we had on that day. On 27 September 2020, the population of Artsakh woke up from the voices of rocket strikes towards Stepanagert and all other civilian communities and major towns of Artsakh. And this fear still exists. And, you know, in terms of mood amongst society, before the war, we used to live for 30 years as a victorious society, as people who had victory. And today, it is really very hard for people because there is very small room for hope, and there are so many uncertainties. But still, we are trying to overcome all these uncertainties, and we are trying to look to the future with hope that the conflict and the struggle for our self-determination will one day come to its success, and the independence and the reunification with motherland will happen. This is how yesterday people in Artsakh felt. Yes, we had a moment of silence. Then we had requiem ceremonies in our main cathedral, and then we marched to our cemetery to perish the memory of our victims.
Gentlemen, during the 44-day war, and for some time thereafter, and to this day, there are volunteers, many volunteers who we know who from the diaspora went to Armenia, went to Artsakh, physicians, nurses, other medical professionals, and they witnessed the atrocities and the use of munitions that are prohibited by international standards onto civilian population of Artsakh during the war. And as Arman Tatoyan mentioned a moment ago, some shelling and attacks onto Armenia proper territory during the 44-day war. And of course, we now have what we have. My question is, what is the status of the disabled veterans who have many challenges today from the human rights perspective, their right to dignity, despite or in spite of the physical injuries they've suffered during this atrocious war onto civilians, if you will. And also, what is the status of others who are unknown to us in Azerbaijani prisons in Baku, still held prisoners, still held captives? It's a two-part question. I'd like both of you to comment, if you would. You hear me?
Yes, from whom to start? Yeah.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Well, I will start from the last part of your question, Karojan, related to our POWs, our compatriots who are illegally being held in Azerbaijani prisons. Our compatriots there are held illegally, artificially, to gain, for political purposes, to gain, for political bargaining even, I would say. And there are certain issues when it comes to this specific thing. First of all, you probably have been following my special report, ad hoc report, or several reports, let's say, but the last one had also public resonance and discussions, generated discussions and public discourse on torture and inhuman treatment of Armenian captives by Azerbaijani military forces or armed forces. We produced and published together with our human rights one of our human rights defenders, Tatoyan, an evidence-based report, and Gegham Stepanyan was there as well at the press conference, and we showed, justified with evidence, that Azerbaijani military, special services, border troops, they have been torturing and our compatriots, and they still continue, I think, which shows that each and every moment and every day of presence of our compatriots in Azerbaijan is threat to their life. And we published that report also for prevention purposes, so that the world knows what may happen to any person who may become under the control of Azerbaijani authorities. Because all these people, they were and they are under the responsibility of Azerbaijani authorities. You know that Azerbaijani authorities, they have launched artificially criminal proceedings, investigations, and I consider this as an excuse, so to say, for an international community from their side. So to show why they are delaying and to create artificial reasonings for that, because apparently there are certain claims from international community to transfer or to release the Armenian POWs and civilian captives. Azerbaijani authorities, what they bring, their only argument is that they have investigations, they have court proceedings, so consequently they're waiting for the results of these court proceedings. But it is very apparent that this is itself a war crime, because under the international humanitarian law, specifically, I mean here, Third Geneva Convention, all POWs must be released immediately after the cessation of hostilities. So there is no right, there is no possibility to keep them even for one day, I'm not even talking about launching proceedings, etc. But it is apparent, and in the media there were certain publications, and we know that this is the fact, that they keep them instead they require control over certain territories, or they use the issue for the pressure to use in negotiations. They brought up and they connected with this issue, which is unacceptable, I think, the issue of so-called maps, etc., which is again, that one is also a humanitarian, international humanitarian issue, but it is not, it is impermissible to connect these two main things together and to use them for bargaining purposes. When it comes to, so that is why the Human Rights Defender of Armenia, of Artsakh, were in cooperation, we continue, also in cooperation with other partners, we continue to fight for the release of our compatriots from Azerbaijan, because every moment, every day counts for their life and health. And by not releasing, by the way, the exact number of POWs, they cause mental sufferings, not only to the families of POWs, but also to the families of missing persons, because objectively, naturally, some people have feeling, have hope, some families that their sons, brothers, their husbands are still in captivity, because Azerbaijani authorities do not announce exact number of POWs, which, and this has been from the very beginning the case. When it comes to Armenia, to the current situation, I know that in Artsakh, more or less the situation is the same in terms of emotional feelings, in terms of psychology. Of course, our soldiers who have been fighting heroically now experience challenges, especially those who are disabled now. There is a special center in Armenia under the State Medical University, the home of soldiers, so to say. We are very closely cooperating with them, trying to solve as much as we can or contribute to the solution of their issues. We are receiving complaints, monitoring the situation in our specific division. I have established a specific division, which is called the Division for the Protection of Military Servicemen's Rights and their Family Rights. And we do work not only with them, but also with families, be this need for psychological assistance or I don't know, other issues. And we very recently have submitted proposals to the Parliament to change some legal regulations and to provide new possibilities for these people. And by the way, very recently we have hired one of our new staff members is a participant of the war. So by this, we try to show, though we have limited resources, but we try to encourage their engagement into our society, because I think integration now is the most important thing. Unfortunately, polarization in our society, the being divided in different parts, these political uncertainties or problematic developments, they do create some feelings, may create some feelings of anxiety. And I think we have to strive so that these people do not feel that they're abandoned. And we have, despite any developments, we have to be with them always, you know, because they are the real heroes in our situation and in our history.
And, you know, speaking of the issues of reintegration, I wanted to ask Gegham, you a question regarding civilian reintegration, because of the large numbers of displaced people internally within Artsakh at the end of the war. And we have received reports, obviously, in the last several weeks of issues in terms of water shortages and electricity shortages. And last time we spoke, if I remember correctly, a little over a month ago, perhaps nearly 2 months ago, the issue of housing was really important. Can you give us an update as to where the housing situation is, as well as the essential services like water and electricity and things of that nature? And as well as, you know, the situation with those displaced people that are now in need of housing. Have they been given housing? What is the situation a year on with respect to reintegrating the Artsakh civilians into essentially a new normalcy?
Yeah, okay. You know that we have 40,000 displaced people, among whom over 15,000 returned to Artsakh, and now they are living in Stepanyan and different regions of Artsakh. But we have still more than 25 to 22,000 people who are still living in Yerevan and other marzes. When it comes to the problem that exists for the displaced people here in Artsakh, the first problem is really housing problem. And today, many of them are living in hotels, different dormitories. So they are renting houses, but the availability, the housing stock is not available, is not sufficient in order to accommodate all people. I recently was in Yerevan, and I met also with displaced people from different communities of Artsakh now occupied by Azerbaijan. And, you know, they all, majority at least, wants to come back to Artsakh. And the main problem that they are still in Yerevan is the housing. We also talked about that the government planned to construct houses during 3 years till the end of 2023, but I think that the time is the number of constructing houses the government will not manage to end the construction till the end of 2023, because seeing the process and how the houses are constructed, I think that a longer time will be needed for having a necessary number of housing to accommodate or displaced people. This is the first issue, the most acute problem of displaced people. The second one, of course, is the absence of necessary jobs, working places for displaced people. The job problem existed in Artsakh even before the war, and now it is manifested in a very acute form, because people who are displaced used to work in agricultural field, and now we have lost 60% of our agricultural lands, and people are living mainly in Stepanyan and other regional centers of Artsakh, which means that they are deprived even the opportunity to work in agricultural field. Some jobs are being created, but it is not enough in order to ensure the full realization of working rights of displaced people. What comes to the water supply, you know, it is already 2 weeks that the water supply in Stepanyan is restored, and in Stepanyan we already do not have that problem, but still in some community the problem exists, mainly the communities that are bordering. During our last meeting, I also talked about that the problem in bordering communities is due to the laws of artesian hose that we used to have in order to supply water to our communities. And this is the main reason why some communities are still deprived of drinking water. We have very often electricity cuts, and you know, we lost also a great part of our hydropower plants during the war because they remained in the territory that came under Azerbaijani occupation. And I know that the government is trying to construct new hydropower plant and to have other sources of electricity. But I think that in this respect, we have difficulties during the coming winter. So another problem is the problem connected with the internet and mobile communication. You know that Azerbaijan is making artificial problems for normal life in Artsakh. Their main purpose is to disrupt the normal life in Artsakh and to make the people living in Artsakh to leave this territory. And this is why Aliyev is always using in his statements that there are 25,000 people living in Artsakh. I mean, they are continuing their ethnic cleansing policy by different means. There are not hostilities after the establishment of trilateral statement, but the hardships are continuing to stand before our people. This is the main, this is the general picture of the situation that here we have in Artsakh in terms of the situation with displaced people and also general situation. The rights of displaced people are very important for us, for the Ombudsman's office, and we regularly visit different places where they are living I mean, we are visiting hostels where mainly displaced people are working and living, and we are trying to figure out what problems they are facing and how the Ombudsman's office can be helpful for solving their problems. And we are raising problems with in our meetings with the members of government, and by this we are trying to be helpful.
You know, Gegham, they keep desecrating cemeteries in occupied territories of Artsakh. And are there any efforts, you know, from the Artsakh Human Rights Defender's Office or the government seeking intervention through the Russian peacekeepers, if you will, to see if that could be stopped, and what, if any, international NGOs or any representatives from European countries have set foot in Artsakh the last several months, if any?
Yeah, they are desecrating cemetery. They are destructing our cultural monuments in the territories occupied by Azerbaijan. You know, all those facts have been documented in the report that we published in January 2021. And also we included an appendix to that report presenting the notable Armenian cultural monument cemeteries that remained in these territories, and alarming to the international community that if real steps will not be taken, then Azerbaijan will destruct all the monuments and cemeteries. And it turns that we were right, because we witness how Azerbaijan is treating our culture. About intervention from the Russian side, you know, after the establishment of ceasefire, I remember that our office, the Ombudsman's office, sent a letter to the Russian peacekeeping commander of Russian peacekeeping forces for taking measures to preserve the cemetery in Shushi and also the Surp Ghazanchetsot's Holy Saviour Cathedral and Kanadzham in Shushi. They responded that they are taking all necessary measures, but even after that, we see that Azerbaijani side is not even cooperating with the Russian peacekeepers. Azerbaijani side even does not allow UNESCO to enter to these territories in order to document the situation of those cultural monuments. In this term, the intervention from our side is very limited, and I think that a great international pressure is needed in order to make Azerbaijan to implement the international obligations, mainly preserving the culture and and allowing the international institution structures to enter to those lands. The second part of the question was about the NGOs who are functioning. In this respect, also the situation is not good, because the international isolation of Artsakh is still continuing. For 30 years, the people of Artsakh government, and also from 2008, after the establishment of the Ombudsman's office, we were speaking about the necessity of the international community to be engaged in Artsakh. We always stated even that there are different mechanisms to be engaged. For example, there is a mechanism which is called engagement without recognition that works for Abkhazia, for South Ossetia, and other unrecognized countries. But even the European Union, who is the author of this program for Abkhazia and Ossetia, did not include Artsakh also. So even for our work, for human rights perspective, and for protecting the human rights, it is very difficult not to have international NGOs present in Artsakh, because the international presence is important for capacity building, for enhancing our capacities for trainings and so on. This is why we always are trying to, even online, to have discussions with international NGOs. But even after the war, the situation has not changed in this respect. Very few international NGOs are currently working in Artsakh. Hello Trust, the mining NGO.
But Hello Trust was there from the beginning.
Yeah, they were here even before the war. Some others are also present. Let me not to state their names in order not to make the difficulties for them. So, but really, this is a very, very acute problem also. And you know that the Basse report that was adopted yesterday also noted that the international presence is very, very important for Nagorno-Karabakh. And
I'm sorry, finish your thought, go ahead.
And I hope that the international community will pay more attention to this issue.
So, Karnig, with your permission, Arman, when we're talking about human rights, what is going on with the incursions and the constant settings of fire? And I know that your long driven efforts in terms of creating a demilitarized zone is bearing some fruit. You want to discuss that? Are you able to comment on that at this point or not?
Sure, but let me just reflect on some of the issues that Gegham just said on isolation of Artsakh. Azerbaijan has been always implementing a policy of isolating Artsakh from outside world. This has been always a very clear sign of their policy. And they continue very openly. They continue it now, and they intensified their efforts, much intensified. Because of this policy, or due to this policy from their side, international organizations, unfortunately, there have been no international organizations who could visit Artsakh. I'm talking especially here about intergovernmental international organizations, because we had more or less some international NGOs with some missions, not permanent properly basis, but with some missions, visits, etc. But unfortunately, there were no international organizations, no international officials who could visit. And even my colleague referred just to the PACE resolution that yesterday was passed. But even the special rapporteur of the Council of Europe, who was appointed to deal with Artsakh issues, with war consequences, humanitarian consequences of the war, he even did not visit Artsakh. I said this to him very openly. I said, well, you are going to prepare a report, right? So this report should be based on real facts. You have to be directly engaged in the process. How you will prepare an objective report without visiting. So I said that I understand that in your personal capacity, maybe it is out of your, capacity to decide on this matter, but at least this is for the reputation of Council of Europe, of the pace. If a special rapporteur is appointed to prepare a report on certain region, without visiting this region, how this report is going to reflect the reality. And so this is a vivid example. Let's take human rights commissioners, be this UN or the Council of Europe. None of them visited. There is a very famous principle invented by the Council of Europe, status neutral. Status neutral means that human rights or the fact of a non-recognized state should not affect human rights protection in this territory. Because in Artsakh, we have women, children, persons with disabilities. So this protection of rights of these people have no connection with politics. But unfortunately, due to the very intensified efforts of Azerbaijani authorities, none of them visited Artsakh. And I think that the tragic consequences and the atrocities of during this war, they were direct effects also of this policy of isolating, and silence of international community largely contributed to that. Now, when it comes to Armenian borders, what is happening around our borders? Currently, the violations, the types of violations, even the nature of violations, they are literally the same as they happen now in Artsakh. So if you study the logic, you want to understand whether there are differences. So literally they are the same, and one clearly may understand it very easily that this is a single policy being governed by one by a single center, let's say. So these are regular or from time to time shootings, setting fires, by the way, which is pretty new. And I have to say that yesterday I disseminated another statement that this has been already the third day that they are setting fires or trying to set fires again in the immediate vicinity of our villages in the Kerkonian province. Dragging our civilians, beating them, we had the cases, hindering agriculture works, stealing their cattle, and being present also physically in the lands that belong legally to our compatriots. Here I'm speaking, of course, about incursions, and not only about incursions, because there are many places which are very disputable, and moreover, in these disputed lands, we have many places, many lands, let's say, and houses even, that belong to Armenian citizens by legal documents, legitimate documents that are provided by our citizens, not by independent Armenian authorities, but even by Soviet Armenian authorities. So which is a very important fact, and according to international standards, in the absence of delimitation and demarcation, this is a very important factor. Cadastral documentation should be taken into account. So having said all of this, it is very apparent that, and I have been proposing this since almost the very beginning, that a security zone, a demilitarized zone should be created. And there should be a possibility for our people to restore, a possibility to restore their rights, a possibility to give them back their lands, their houses, so that normal life is restored. And then we could start the delimitation and demarcation of the borders, because delimitation and demarcation of borders, it may take the process 50, 60 years, even if, because in many countries, even many countries could not for many years take decisions on these matters. So that is why I think that, especially in the current situation, when the Armenophobia, when policy of state-sponsored policy of hatred and animosity still continues, it is very important for the protection of our of our people to create this zone. And I have to say that I was very glad when I learned yesterday that in the document, on the 13th of September, the draft was published on the website of Council of Europe, of the Special Rapporteur, and this proposal was included there. And during my meeting with the Special Rapporteur, Paul Gavan, I proposed this, and then we have been working with the Council of Europe partners, and I've been always justifying this with concrete facts. And I have to say that I was reading final version yesterday, and I see that there is a proposal to negotiate a demilitarized zone, which is around our borders, which is very important. And not only Sunik, but also Gegham, and at least on the examples of these two provinces, which is very important. Otherwise, it would be very hard and even not possible to properly protect the rights of our citizens. And we have prepared also, I have to say, the draft concept, or the based on concrete facts. We designed on the Google map all their presence and the locations of Azerbaijani armed forces and border troops, which we are going to present very soon.
Arman, if I could follow up with, I was thinking about the fact of our discussions prior to the war, and our discussions obviously since the war. And it's clear, and we all know this, but I think it's important to kind of take a step back and think about this for a second. Your office has been functioning at the level of a humanitarian crisis every single day for the last year. My question is this: in your opinion, at what point does the infrastructure of the Ombudsman's office start to feel the pain of being able to service all of these ordinary and extraordinary needs of civilians? I mean, this is, of all the human rights ombudsmen, there are probably less than a handful of those that are dealing with the types of issues that your office and Gegham, your office, are dealing with on a daily basis. Tell me a little bit about bandwidth, about capacity, about what your outlook is, because you're also a reflection of the society. And at some point, there is a limit to what society can take. Even watching, it becomes indigestible for many people. It becomes hard to understand and see and watch. But living there, working with these issues, do you feel that there is in dealing with humanitarian crises every single day, as you are, with most human rights ombudsmen don't have to deal with the rights of civilians due to demarcation and delimitation, or the rights of civilians that are stone's throw away from adverse military presences. These are very serious considerations. They're very different considerations than any office would deal with. What is your sense of capacity over the last year? How have you been able to manage? We know, and we have discussed issues with respect to financing and things with respect to the government's position at some point. This is a few months ago. But obviously, I watched the PACE discussions on the Special Rapporteur's report earlier today, which would have been in the evening in Europe, and clearly the other side is extremely well funded. That is absolutely apparent from the questions being asked, not by the Azeris or the Turks, but by the other parties, members of parliament. It is clear that there is a significant amount of influence. How do institutions such as yourselves, such as yours, see what the prospect is moving forward? It cannot be that you can operate at full tilt every single day for an entire year and not feel the strains on the institution. What is your outlook for the institution of the Human Rights Ombudsman going forward if the situation is not improved?
Well, I have to say that we have we have been working with the same resources as we had before the war, and even the situation is worse in terms of limitations, because we are now experiencing problems with the government. There are new limitations, new constraints for the servants who work for this office, artificial, I would say, and a new public, even very soon, if they do not solve the issue, a new, well, in brackets, I would put this in brackets, a new problem or scandal is going to be announced, let's say. But I haven't still announced it widely, so I'm still waiting for the solutions from the government side. It concerns the salaries, it concerns resources, flexibility in our staff, etc. The second huge challenge was that we could not find even a single institution who could have this kind of experience, not only dealing with the war consequences, because there are apparently ombuds institutions dealing with war consequences, humanitarian, etc., documented. But when it comes to delimitation, demarcation, to security issues, connecting it to human rights, and then trying to understand what we can reveal from human rights, take out from there, and then to use it for human rights protection. I think that before us, if you ask the question whether border security has a relation to human rights, probably everyone in Armenia would say that no, that this is only political and military. But I think we could show to everyone and to the world that, with your help, by the way, that the human rights delimitation and demarcation, border security, generally security is the basis for human rights. And without security, there is no, it is even senseless to speak about human rights. When it comes to our job, so what do? We implement our work, our job is directed or aims to spread light, and we have different functions. First and foremost is creating evidence, documenting all the violations, showing to the world the real situation here on the ground. Because Azerbaijani authorities, from the very first day of the war until now, they do everything. They have been doing everything to show to the world that everything is perfect. There are no problems, that they solved all their issues, that Armenia and Artsakh, these are the aggressors, that they're protecting their rights. And now, after the war especially, they want peace. And this is only Armenia and Artsakh, and especially Armenia, that doesn't want peace. And Armenians are fascists, they cannot live with others, etc., and so forth. So, at some point, even I was feeling, I was facing questions from our international partners, asking literally the following question. Well, look, Azerbaijanis want peace, these people. Why? What do you want? Do you want a new war? Why you do not agree for a peace with these people? Because everything seems very clear already. The war is over, and there are no problems, etc. So what we were doing, we were showing through our evidence, the documentation, etc., that the reality is totally different. Because Azerbaijani authorities have been always doing the same. The same was in 2016 during April War. The same was before that, etc. When they use peace building or ice breaking, so-called, or peace building measures as fake curtain for the international community. But in reality, they continue the hatred and Armenophobia policy, which is now happening, by the way. Right now, they announce that they are ready for peace, etc., and so forth, some very nice words, but the reality is totally different. And that is why our job, a very important thing here, is to be very credible, to be very accurate, and to be very professional. Because, as you very rightly said, Azerbaijan is investing lots of money in these efforts, in the propaganda, trying to show even to the world that Armenia, not even talking about Artsakh, but the whole Armenia is the historical land of that belongs to Azerbaijan, and Armenia is just artificially created on these lands. So the purpose is to be very accurate in order to be a reliable source for international community. Not only for international, by the way, for our ambassadors as well, the diplomats, other officials. And we are proud that, for example, the ICJ application, which is submitted to the International Court of Justice, this application is to very much extent based on our reports and documentation. The application to the European Court of Human Rights, again, is based on our reports and statements and documentation. The PACE resolution is very much extent, again, is based on our documentation, etc. So this is the purpose, the main purpose, and we are ready. We are there to continue as much as possible, as needed, and as we can. This is very important because, you know, if we give up, then definitely I think it will. This is only in the interests of Azerbaijani authorities. You probably know how much we are targeted by Azerbaijani authorities and media, which are governed by authorities, that officially submitted 2 applications against the human rights defender of Armenia by Azerbaijani authorities to the United Nations and to the Council of Europe. And it is even funny to read the statement. It is called the complaint on anti-Azerbaijani activities of the Armenian ombudsman in the region. So it's very good. They raised our kind of level of influence, which is very good. But I don't think that they will reach their goal, because our activeness is the only key. Otherwise, if we are passive, if we give up, then it will open up their hands. And very also shortly, let me just say that I think our activities also contribute to the public discourse in Armenia. So we create, I think, and we lead to very high extent public discourse in Armenia, and to show to the public the reality that the violations are there, that these atrocities, the danger of the threat of atrocities is very real, so that we have ourselves to create safeguards for us, because it is very obvious that the purpose of Azerbaijani authorities is to erase the Armenian ethnicity. Because why the beheadings took place? They beheaded people because of one mere fact, because they belonged to Armenian ethnicity, because they're Armenians. This is very clear. And it is very highly encouraged by Azerbaijani authorities. We have to be clear as well. And this policy is still there.
Gegham, if I can ask you, as a follow-up to what Arman just spoke about, one of the main issues that we're hearing when we hear about the isolation issue is the efforts to try to eradicate the voice of Artsakh, right? The agency of Artsakh. And this is something that the foreign minister David Babayan had spoken about early on, is the fact that the goal of Artsakh's diplomacy at this point, whether it's on the human rights side or on the state side, is to maintain that sense of agency, so that we, as the Armenians of Artsakh, still have a voice in the international community. Could you explain what your thoughts are on that, in terms of the voice of Artsakh being diminished through politics and gamesmanship in the international relations world, and then secondly, what you would like, what you are doing in terms of your office to try to increase that voice, and what the diaspora could do to help you amplify the voice of the Artsakh people?
Yeah, in a state of non-recognition, I think that the ombudsman is the unique channel of voicing the situation currently existing in Artsakh. And you know that international institutions, international other countries are not ready, do not want at all to be engaged with the government, for example, with politicians from Artsakh. And the Human Rights Ombudsman's office and Human Rights Ombudsman is the only channel and the only official, let's say, that they are somehow trying to
interact with,
cooperate, and interact. And I felt this even not only in the relations with foreign officials, but also in relations with foreign journalists. They, for example, they interview me and they are presenting what I am saying, but they do not want to interview, for example, the same foreign minister and other ministers. This is really a valuable channel for us for trying to raise our voice, and we are using that. Of course, also very closely cooperating with the Human Rights Ombudsman's Defender's Office of Armenia, which is really very valuable cooperation for us during the war and after the war. What comes to the cooperation with diaspora, there are many organizations that we are now cooperating, and especially for presenting the reports, for example, that we prepare here based on the fact-finding mission that we implemented during the war and after the war. Today, we are now working on the report about displaced people, and I will send it to all active diaspora organizations, and we'll ask them to spread it, to present it to different international structures and international officials. In a situation of isolation, we should work in order to reach to use every possible channel. Because from the other side, Azerbaijan is always trying to pursue the notion that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh, there is no any Artsakh in their territory, and there are only 25,000 people in Artsakh, and there is no need for self-determination. So we should try to raise our voice in order to present the reality, saying that there are more than 100,000 people living in Artsakh, and we still are fighting for our self-determination. I think that our cooperation with the diaspora organizations in this sense is in a very high level, but we will continue our work in order to engage more organizations and more diaspora people for advocating for the rights of Artsakh people and for voicing about the problems, humanitarian problems and other problems that today are present in Artsakh. This much. The Ombudsman's Office of Artsakh was created in 2008, and we already faced 2 wars in 2016 and 2020. And even if our staff is very small, 15 people are working, we somehow know how to work in a war situations and in a humanitarian disaster. We are mainly implementing 2 tasks. The first one is to aware to the international community and to ward about the war crimes, about the human rights violations that are committed by the Azerbaijani side. And our second task is to protect the rights of Artsakh people inside the country. And unlike our Armenian colleague, we do not have obstacles with government, because we have former ombudsman in government who is trying to be helpful, who knows the importance of the Ombudsman's office and trying to be helpful in all our plans and in all our activities.
Gegham, thank you so much for the insights, and Arman Jan, I want to say thank you to you for, and I'm really excited about the fact that there is now international appreciation for the demilitarized zone. I remember our first conversation on Front Lines when you introduced the idea. It was one that was an extremely important one to protect civilians in the border areas, and to hear that that issue being discussed in international organizations today shows not only the foresight that you had, but also the commitment to pushing that idea into the right avenues and into the right places professionally to be able to garner that type of support. Both of you, I have to say, thinking back and looking back over the last year, the work that both of you have done is absolutely tremendous. I know that you know that. I know that you know that we appreciate you, as well as all of the viewers and the entire Armenian diaspora and nation historically will look back at the moment and the contributions that both of you have made to the survival and the defense of the Armenian people. It is indeed a historic undertaking that each of you have embarked on and have maintained since this war began. And we commend you on that. And we thank you again for taking the time to spend with us. I know it's an early morning there on a very important day, the day after an important day, as every day will be important from now moving forward. And we appreciate very much your time to come with us, to have conversation with us and our viewers regarding the prospects, an assessment of the past and the prospects for the future. So thank you very much again for your input today. And I would like to pass it on to Garo for his thoughts.
Thank you, Karnig. Thank you, Gegham Jan. Thank you, Arman Jan, for everything that you do that nobody knows about. Unheralded service is true service. It's been a year since the war, but we've been at war. The people of Artsakh and the people of Armenia have been at war for quite some time, a war of aggression that has been brought onto civilians who want nothing but to live in peace. We did not stop our broadcasts, as Karnig suggested early on that we would stop, as we started it on the first day, September 27th of 2020, when the war ended. We did not stop because the war did not end. Sure, documents were signed, ceasefires were declared, there was a lot of lip service, but the war never ended. It didn't end, and it continued to take different forms, and it continues to be, to this day, more sinister. What does it mean to pull over a bus full of children going to a soccer game and intimidate them dressed in masks and try and scrape the Artsakh flag from the bus with a knife? It's been a year since the war. We've learned plenty, and we have plenty more to learn. Here's one thing that I think we need to learn. We need to learn to be better Armenians. We need to learn to be better human beings. We need to learn, and now when I say we, I'm specifically talking about the diaspora. We collectively, all of us, need to be more resolute. We need to be more united. We need to understand what is our common cause and go after that common cause with commitment, and I mean daily commitment. Here's what I'm going to close with this program, Karnig. I'm going to close it with a resolute, with a committed group of people who have put out the statement by the Foreign Ministry of the Republic of Artsakh on the occasion of the anniversary of the war unleashed on September 27, 2020 on Artsakh by Azerbaijan. Statement that was issued September 27 in the morning in Stepanyan. The Foreign Ministry of the Republic of Artsakh, on the occasion of the anniversary of the war unleashed on September 27, 2020, on Artsakh by Azerbaijan, has issued a statement. During the 44-day aggression, Azerbaijan employed indiscriminate weapons prohibited by international conventions against the population of Artsakh, grossly damaging the economic and civil infrastructure as well as the environment. The Republic of Artsakh suffered thousands of human losses as a result of the war, and most of its territory was occupied. Only thanks to the deployment of the Russian peacekeeping mission in the region, the aggression of the criminal Triple Alliance was stopped. However, even after the cessation of hostilities, Azerbaijan continues its blatantly aggressive, anti-Armenian, and expansionist policy at the state level, grossly violating all the agreements, norms of international law, and principles of humanity. To this day, a great number of prisoners of war are kept in inhumane conditions in Azerbaijan, being subjected to torture and humiliated. Azerbaijan systematically carries out cultural genocide and destroys the Armenian historical heritage in the occupied territories of Artsakh. The ceasefire is regularly violated by Azerbaijan with an aim to evict Armenians from Artsakh through psychological pressure and intimidation. Today, more than ever, we are determined to strengthen and develop our independent and sovereign statehood and decide our own political future, excluding any kind of status within Azerbaijan. The foreign policy priorities of Artsakh continue to be the international recognition of the independence of the Republic of Artsakh, preservation of its status as a geopolitical subject, the occupation of the territories of Artsakh, ensuing the continuation of the negotiation process with the full-fledged participation of Artsakh within the framework of the OSCE Minsk Group, development of relations with various countries and structures. The key to the effective implementation of all these goals is the strengthening of the Armenia-Artsakh diaspora trinity, conducting a realistic foreign policy guided by state interests. On this sad day, we are rightfully proud of the courage and heroism of the defenders of the motherland. We pay tribute to those who sacrificed their lives for the sake of freedom and independence of Artsakh. Long live the Republic of Artsakh. Thank you, and have a pleasant day, have an Armenian day, and have a day for service of humanity. Thank you, gentlemen. Continue as you are. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.